This is AUGforums.com Real Talk. First, thank you to our sponsors, APS Payments, Kenzium, and Velixo. You can learn more about how our sponsors work with Acumatica by going to augforums.com/sponsors. My name is Tim Rodman, and I'm coming to you live on Thursday, August 27th, 2020. This is episode number 22, Acumatica Customer Interview with Franklin Shiraki. And Franklin, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tim. My name is Franklin Shiraki. I'm the CFO at Firewire Surfboards. Been with the company for about 7 years now. No, wait, that's wrong. 6 years. In various roles. I kind of started off as a staff accountant, was the controller for about almost 5 years, and recently was promoted to CFO. Prior to working at Firewire, interestingly enough, actually not on the finance side or the audit side. I was on the tax track. Always enjoyed working on corporate work, but always knew that the partner route was never for me. So one day the opportunity with Firewire came up, and it was, I've been a lifelong surfer. I grew up in Hawaii, so I've been doing it since I was a teen. It's always been a huge part of my life. So, everyone likes to talk about melding your professional and personal passions into one. And, I think there's that adage, when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. And, I always thought that was a little bit of baloney, but after kind of, after kind of living that life, it's actually true. I left public accounting thinking I was gonna, go into private. Granted, it was a great opportunity to work for a surfboard company, but just thinking also I was gonna go into private accounting, work a few less hours, get a little more of my life back, and that's the case here and there. But with implementing new systems, over the last few years, probably worked and traveled more than I ever have in my life. But also I've been, happier than I've ever been, or at least in my, in my previous career path. So, there's some definite truth to that statement about loving what you do. So happy that I've been able to meld the two, and just very thankful that I've been put in the opportunity that I have.
That's awesome. So Firewire, I think it's self-explanatory, but you make surfboards. Maybe you could tell us a little bit, like you make it end to end, or do you just put it together at the end? How does that? Yeah. What Firewire actually does? What Firewire actually does as a business? How does that work?
Sure. So we're, and please don't quote me on this because, surfboards are a pretty niche market. So, unlike other product categories, there's not an extensive amount of market research being done within the space because, market research is only, it's only a viable opportunity for whoever's doing it if there's a way to monetize it. And, most surfboard builders probably could care less about it. So that being said, we're probably the largest manufacturer distributor of surfboards in the world. If not, definitely one of the top 2 or 3. I guess, and when I say surfboards, I'm talking about premium surfboards. We would have to strike Wave Storms that are sold in Costco out of that conversation, because if you were to include those, then they are the number one. It's not even close. I mean, they might outsell every other large premium surfboard manufacturer combined. It's crazy the amount of volume that they do. And, anyone who's been to the beach and is familiar with surfing probably has seen a wave storm, at least, under someone's arm or on someone's car. So, kudos to them. They've been able to kind of capitalize on the market opportunity. But back to what we do. So we're a little different in the way that we go about things. I guess the best way to describe what we do is we're a surfboard technology company. We're not your traditional surfboard builder, who's got a shaper who's been doing this all their life that is working under our label and making all of our boards. What we do is we go out and we find specific shapers throughout, just throughout the world, basically, that we want to work with, that have a shape that's intriguing to us and we believe has potential, market potential. And then we go and we take those shapes and we build them within our proprietary technologies. We have basically 3 different main builds. We have LFT, which is linear flex technology, helium, which utilizes a parabolic stringer versus the standard center stringer placement to kind of create the rigidity and the flex pattern to the board, and then TimberTech, which is also a parabolic stringer, but it's a board that's, I guess, laminated on the outside with paulownia wood, which is, if you're not familiar with paulownia, they call it the evergreen tree because it's one of those plants that can grow faster than we can harvest. So, it's a good way to, create a very aesthetically cool looking product, something that's also very strong, very durable, and, just be eco-conscious. We're trying to do our part by pushing the eco-consciousness within the surfboard industry, because traditionally a lot of the materials that are used, and even to this day to some degree, are petroleum based, and it's ironic that you have a sport that's completely done, in nature, and some of the, a lot of the products that we use to enjoy ourselves within this sport are some of the more toxic things on the planet. So, we're just doing our part, by no means perfect, but, we're trying to do everything we can to get better on a day-by-day basis and, push the boundaries of how to make high-performance, eco-conscious equipment for our consumers.
So you go all over the world, or at least you go all over the coasts around the world, I would imagine, and you find people who've got good designs, and then it sounds like you're scaling it up and allowing them to produce on a larger scale. Is that essentially what you're doing?
Yes, correct. Yeah, sorry, I didn't really, we joked about tangents earlier. I kind of tangented and never really fleshed out the entirety of the business operation. But so we kind of have a stable of designers that we typically work with, but we're always open to new designs as well. And these are usually come via some of our high profile team riders. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with the name Kelly Slater. If you're familiar with surfing, he's been the owner of our company for about the last 6 years or 5 years, sorry. And he's someone who understands equipment to a degree that pretty much most others on this planet don't. Granted, he's 11-time world champion. He's got every competitive accolade that you can imagine. So, he's well familiar with, highly fine-tuned equipment, and he's also very, very open-minded in terms of board design. He doesn't believe a high-performing board has to look a certain way and have trying something new and, finding out it's awesome. So kind of coming back to everything, so we find these designers, whether they're someone we have a relationship with or whether it's someone new, and then we take those designs and we apply our technology to it. We have a very robust product development process where, we take the design and we digitize it, and, we create computer files, for our CNC machines to not only cut the designs, but also cut the designs in a way that allows us to manufacture the boards within our technology. And then, we create what we call a product range. So, typically the first design will come in a set size, and then we'll have to scale it out larger and smaller because surfboards are very user specific. A board that works for me, someone weighing 150 pounds, is not going to be the same board that someone who weighs 220 pounds is going to want to ride. So then we manufacture and then we distribute through our distribution entities that are throughout the globe, and then we're off and running.
Interesting. Being a privately, so you said you think you're definitely one of the largest, if not the largest. Being privately held, you might not be able to share this, but if possible, just give us an idea of size, ballpark, annual revenue, and number of employees, if possible.
Yeah, so we sit probably a shade under 300 employees globally. Most of it is on the manufacturing side, with the distribution footprint is pretty minimal. And then in terms of revenue, I would just say that we're pretty much a true mid-sized business. We're definitely, we operate as an SMB, which is why, Acumatica was a perfect fit for us, that's kind of right in their wheelhouse. So yeah, we're just kind of, we're a true mid-sized business in kind of all aspects, headcount and also revenues as well.
So you've got that need for a true ERP system. You're doing the manufacturing yourself, so that's part of your process. Before you even got involved with Acumatica, what systems were you running to try to meet that need, and how was it working for you?
Prior to Acumatica, we were on a few disparate systems globally. To be honest, I actually don't know what they all were because, I a lot of time from some of our particular entities, I would just get the month-end financials and I would just roll them up. The system that we used as kind of our main system was called Greentree, or is called Greentree. I should say was, because it still exists, just not in our world. So yeah, it's Greentree. It's a package from, I think it's originated in New Zealand. It's pretty good product. At least the version that we had, we had a personally hosted version, so it was kind of subject to upkeep on our fruition, or not fruition, but on our cognition. And we actually hadn't upgraded in a while, so I don't know how it stacks up to what the newest iteration of the product is. But it had a great backend. I felt like the processing engine was great, and it had a lot of cool features. But the UI definitely had some of the green screen feeling, I guess.
Well, the name like Greentree, right? The green screen. Yeah. I guess that's
yeah, makes sense.
I've actually heard of that one. Just a couple episodes ago, I was talking with Carl Brooks from down in Australia, and he was well aware of Greentree.
Because
he's in Australia or New Zealand. Can't recall where it was originally.
Yeah, it looks like he's familiar with MyOb, and I believe Greentree sits under MyOb. I don't know exactly what I guess particular niche it fills, because to me it would seem like if you were a Greentree customer, you probably would also be an Acumatica customer, which is, I believe it's MyOb Advanced in Australia. So
right.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it does sit in the MyOb portfolio from what I gathered the last time I had kind of looked into it.
So you were using Greentree just for your financials, or were you doing your manufacturing process on that as well?
For most of our financials, distribution, most modules except for most modules except for manufacturing. We have a SQL database that my predecessor and an outside consultant developed, and we actually still use it to this day. Its purpose has changed a little. So originally, it kind of controlled all of our manufacturing flow, even our bill of materials, and basically it was used to kind of capture everything through the manufacturing process, and then we would spit that out and then put that into our old financial software. Versus now we use it essentially just to manage our manufacturing flow, and everything financial related is now housed within Acumatica. There's a few reasons why we couldn't use Acumatica. The main one being is we serialize everything. We have we're kind of that weird area where it's a pretty high ticket item, so we do want to serialize everything for quality control purposes, and then also just to track the product. It's a lot easier because if you're producing 2 or 3 of the same SKU, and it's at a particular customer shop, we operate a consignment model within the U.S. Not knowing what particular cereal it is, makes it hard to identify. And given that they're pretty large ticket items, you don't really want to just mix them all into a singular bin. But we also do enough of a volume where it gets a little tricky to have something go through the entire production process and just get serialized at the end. So that's why we decided to retain our previous system, because it allows us to serialize the product at the very beginning of the production cycle. And we really just use Acumatica to kind of manage, our inventory and facilitate our bill of materials and all the financial aspects related to what goes on in production.
So it's like the dollar side of production, not so much the production process itself that you're using Acumatica for.
Correct.
I'm curious.
Yeah, it's not.
When you make the point about it being a high dollar item, on the last episode I was talking to Harsha about RFID tags. Are you doing anything with RFID?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask. We actually are. Currently, this is something that we've never really let our consumers know, but actually all of the surfboards that have been purchased probably within the last 4 years have an NFC tag, which is similar to RFID in concept. The only difference is the range of the frequency. So, whereas an RFID, anything, within basically your geo fence will get picked up. An NFC, like, you have to stir, and that's actually what we use to manage our production flow. So, at the end of every, because, a board, some of our boards probably have upwards of 20, almost 30 stages before they hit completion. So, to properly manage our workflow, track our WIP, and, just kind of all the normal production things, we use these NFC tags at every stage, where basically you can, scan a board and it will register in the database that, all right, this stage has been completed, it's being transferred to the next. So, yeah, we're
interesting.
Yes, we're
when I picture I picture like just people in Hawaiian shirts, kind of out in the back of a shop and taking it easy. But you guys really have a high-tech process there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we've taken, and there's nothing to discount, the traditional shaping business and the way that they operate, because I think there's a place for all of us in this world. They're able to create highly curated, very differentiated, unique pieces of art, versus we're building these very high-tech boards, but also in a way that allows us to kind of reach a larger consumer audience. So it just depends, for to each their own. So yeah, we just we've taken the all the performance aspects of surfing and kind of I guess created more standard business practices around them, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, it's funny what you actually remind me of is there's another Acumatica customer, PXG, Parsons Extreme Golf, that makes high-end golf clubs, and sounds like a similar kind of a thing where you're standardizing a process but still producing a high-end product in a fun industry, similar to another Acumatica customer there.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to what we do.
Maybe we could shift gears and talk about how the implementation went. So maybe think about it from this angle. For anyone listening, what advice would you give someone who's in the middle of implementing Acumatica, maybe lessons you learned, things you might do differently next time?
For sure. The number one thing, and I think this probably stands true with most consulting arrangements, is find a good partner, find someone you trust, find someone that's reliable, someone that's knowledgeable. In particular to that second point, find consultants who are forward thinking and extremely knowledgeable with the product. Because the last thing you want to be working with is a consultant that tells you things you already know. It's the whole point of having these high-priced individuals working with you. But yeah, that's kind of the crux of, I feel like, what starts the successful implementation, and then the rest kind of falls upon the implementer. Just be very invested, be realistic. It's I guess the house hunters analogy might be appropriate. If given the size and scope of your implementation, be realistic in what you're willing to pay. You're not going to get, I guess I'll use SAP as an example. You're not going to be able to get a full-on SAP implementation across 5 different companies for $200,000. Like that's just being unrealistic. And it just creates a better relationship between yourself and your implementation partner when you're not trying. You should be cost conscious, but you should not try to kind of wring every amount of profitability out of the deal for them, because at the end of the day they're a business as well. Another thing is scoping out the implementation properly. We had, as you can probably infer, we're a surfboard company. So while we are a little more structured than others, we're still pretty laid back, still pretty easygoing. And, that can tend to not be conducive to a successful implementation, because you kind of just let things go and just kind of assume they're understood and assume it's all good, for lack of better phrases. We just ran some issues early on during our, just kind of putting together the scope of the project within our FRD, where we had a misunderstanding where we just said, we're basically taking one entity and copying it over 6 times. Not really ever explicitly saying that one of the 6 entities that we're creating is a manufacturing entity, and it's the only entity that does manufacturing, which means, that's going to be a completely different implementation than the other 5. So just things like that, being very explicit early on, kind of laying out all the specifics, spending a lot of time during the initial planning stage. I know it's probably can get a little monotonous and not the most exciting portion of it, but the more diligence you can place in the planning, it should just make for an easier implementation, because you can kind of scope out all the different potential pain points, any issues, any whether it's regards to timing, functionality, anything like that, and just it gives you a little bit more runway to kind of problem solve and trouble.
Into phases, or did you spin up all 6 entities, including manufacturing, on one go live date?
We initially were going to do, it was always going to be phased, but we were initially going to do, I believe, the largest distribution entity and the manufacturing entity, I guess we'll call it month 0, and then month 2, 3, and 4, we were going to layer in the additional entities. That was our plan, and what they say about best laid plans, they often go awry. So I found out about 3 days before we were about to go live with the manufacturing instance that we hit a major snag in importing some of our existing data into Acumatica, and this was something that was totally on us, not on our consultants. It actually had nothing to do with putting data into Acumatica. It had to do with us getting, how being thorough and being diligent on the front end can save you a lot of pain, in the process. This was something I had always talked to the team, and they had all said, yep, no problem. We can do it. We're good. And then time to do it came, and yeah, I got a call. It happened to be while I was on vacation, which was lovely. 3 days prior, said we can't. So then I had to ring our then CFO and deliver the bad news, which that's always something you want to do. When we're all on vacation. So that ended up kind of changing the timeline of the way we did things. So we ended up doing, I think like month 0, 2, 3, 4, or no, 3, 4, 5. We layered in the rest, and then we dropped in manufacturing in month 7.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it was still a fairly quick implementation. But yeah, we did end up having to phase it. And I honestly, it's one of those things. It's funny how life always works out for the best. I'm glad it happened this way, because after seeing how stressful that first month going live with just one distribution entity was, if we had that layered on with the amount of support I had to do on the manufacturing entity later on, I would have lost it. That manufacturing implementation, as anyone who works with a manufacturing system on a pretty large scale, it's a beast. There's so much data, you know, and it's very technical, and it's one of the things that's technical and it's high volume, so it just requires a lot of attention and, you know, just a lot of checking, rechecking, finding creative ways to parse data out of a system just to ensure that everything's, you know, kind of going the way you want. So yeah, I'm happy it all worked out the way it did, because it was probably for the best, and it allowed for a very successful implementation overall, which, you know, if we had gone with both of those in that first go around, I probably wouldn't have had the same depth of product knowledge that I did by the time we got to manufacturing. And yeah, like I said, scary to think what would have happened, for my personal sanity, and also just, you know, and to ensure that the company has been taken care of as well. You know, I feel like I might have figured it out, but, you know, the probability of me failing would have been much higher.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I personally like that same approach. You know, you phase it in as much as you can. There's some things that have to come together, but other things can be layered in, and to me, part of it is just being able to do it, bandwidth, to your point, not getting overwhelmed. But another part that I heard you say was, you know, then you know the system better, right? A big problem doing it all at once is you don't know what you don't know, and it's sort of like eating a really large meal. You're taking it a piece at a time, able to digest it before you move on to the next piece, and then you're in a better position by the time you got to get manufacturing to know how the rest of the system works, and then you're just focused on that one area. So I'm glad to hear that was a good experience. I personally like the same approach. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, this was my first ever implementation. You know, I think one of the questions you'll get, or at least that I've gotten, because I've talked to students and stuff like why would you do this? And, you know, I wish I had a better answer, but it's kind of how I've evolved through my life. I was like, why not? Better answer, but it's kind of how I've evolved through my life. I was like, why not? You know, I'll figure this out. And what a learning experience it was. You know, it's something that I'll definitely carry forward. And I'm glad to hear that, you know, it's kind of a standard practice within the way implementations are done. It's glad to know that, you know, at least I was somewhat on the right track, and I'll definitely be on a better track going forward.
So when was that, like when you first started the process to when you first went live to when you were all the way through to manufacturing? You mentioned, I think you said month 0. Is that when you started the implementation itself? And then month 5,
0, I guess
you went live?
I was referring to right before we went live. So we started.
Okay.
I'll just use concrete dates if we want to talk about the full timeline. I believe we started the process in 2016 of, all right, you know, the business is in 2016 of, all right, you know, the business is growing. It's time to upgrade. You know, we need to find something that's going to kind of grow with our business needs, get everyone on a single system. We can't be operating on disparate systems, because especially given that we're global, you know, a lot of times you have a question, you shoot out an email. It's the middle of the night, say in Thailand, where we do our manufacturing. So they get up, they answer the email, they shoot it back to you. By the time they get back to you, it might be nighttime here, so you're sleeping. You wake up, you check it, you're like, oh crap, this is not exactly what I wanted. You shoot back a response, you know, they get back. So, you know, you're looking at, you know, 72-hour cycle before you finally get the answer to the singular question, versus being on a singular system. I just hop into their accounting package and I can see exactly what they're doing and be like, okay, cool. We're good to go. So we had started in 2016. I believe we identified Acumatica of 2017. So I think that's like late January, early February. You know, we had looked at a few other systems as well during Q1, early Q2 of 2017, including SAP Business One and Sage X3. And we actually were really close to going with SAP Business One, but at the last minute decided Acumatica was a much better fit. So I think we pulled the trigger, I want to say in May, started the implementation cycle in July or August. And then we went live with the first entity the following January. So probably about 6 months or so of prep.
So that was months of January 2018 then for you.
Yes, correct. That was our first entity we went live with.
That worked out for you then. That the summit, I believe the summit that you.
That's a great memory. Yeah. Yeah. They're like, hey, because we so our VAR is Crestwood, and they supported they supported Green Tree as well. So we were very familiar with them. When we were kind of trying to identify potential packages, they hit us up and they're like, hey, actually there's this thing called Acumatica Summit going on down in La Jolla. Come down. So, we showed up. We're like, oh, this is a pretty awesome package. We got a demo, and they immediately were in the running as one of the packages that we wanted to consider as being what we move forward with.
Very interesting. I like that. Yeah. So that was a couple years ago. Then you've been running on it for a while. Where you're at now, you kind of look back and consider maybe creative ways that you use Acumatica, maybe some outside ISV tools that you use, or some customizations that you've done. Anything come to mind from a non-standard or, things that you've done inside Acumatica to make it fit your business better?
Yeah, we've got quite a few things going on. We work with CBS, Century Business Solutions, for our integrated payment processing, and been very happy with them as a solution in the U.S. A lot of our customers like to pay via credit card, and just been very happy with the way that system integrates within Acumatica, and then also they have their own customer portal that pulls data directly out, and just allows us just an easier facilitation of the collections process. We are working with Blackline to do some balance sheet reconciliation. They're basically standardizing your balance sheet reconciliation templates, and also creating a central repository for all the support. It's something I believe that will become kind of standard business practice, at least if it fits your business needs, of course, depending on how large an entity you are. But I believe it will become standard business practice in the next few years, just because it allows so much of an ease of audit, where you have a central repository, and all you do is you just give your auditor access to there, and you just kind of let them parse through the data, rather than we need list A through N, and you have to go through, find all the documents, compile them, put them in a Dropbox or in an email and send it back. It's like, here's your login, read only, have at it. It's just
interesting. I haven't heard of that one. You said Blackline. That's for your audit process, or for your your monthly balance sheet reconciliation? For
your monthly balance sheet reconciliation process, and then and then just kind of an added benefit. They've got some other functionality as well, but this is kind of the main usage that we have it for. And then just when you get to the end of the year audit, you have all the support for all your balance sheet recs for the entire year. It's just all in a central repository, and you just allow your auditor to kind of go through, pick and choose whatever supporting documents they need, to substantiate your financials. So it's
interesting. So instead of doing it in Excel, you're doing it in an application that tracks changes and allows you to make comments and have a more structured way of looking at it. Interesting.
Yep.
Check that one out.
It's a very awesome tool, and I believe they have a built-in import, or I guess it's an export feature to Blackline, or not built-in, but a free customization that's kind of sitting out there. I can't remember how to get it, if it's via Blackline or if it's via Acumatica or GitHub or somewhere, but I know we've come across it, and there's kind of basically a connector already between the two systems, so that's pretty rad.
Assume it's pretty light. It's light though, and that all they happen to do is pull GL debits and credits, right? It's not like it's sitting inside of Acumatica, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. You're just pulling geo transaction data over. That's pretty much the main thing you need. You can pull other things as well, but that's kind of the basic piece of information that would flow into Blackline and you could use. So we're using that. We do business in Portugal. Their government has some crazy compliance requirements. Basically, I think there's a few other countries. I want to say like Mexico and Spain, where you have you basically have to electronically certify every invoice. So every invoice gets submitted via something similar to like an EDI system to the government. There's a confirmation number that's associated with that invoice, and that way the government's able to track your revenues on basically down to pretty much down to the dollar. Anything that runs through your invoicing has to go through that system. So with the help of Crestwood and a third party called Edicom, we built something to satisfy that requirement. What else do we have going on?
That's interesting. I actually at a Acumatica Hackathon a couple of years ago on our team, we had a few people from, I think it was Peru or Bolivia, I can't remember, somewhere in South America, and our solution that we were doing was like just scratching their heads like, why would you need to do this? Shouldn't it all be electronic? Because they were doing the same thing in their country. I'm like, yeah, actually, we sound really backwards in the United States, the way we're still doing so much on paper, although, you got to figure COVID is going to change a lot of that and maybe get a little closer to those countries that do it all electronically.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, given our global presence, I get laughed at all the time, the fact that we still actually get physical checks from our customers in the U.S. We're like, wait, what? Why? Like in a country like Australia, we don't even actually have a check template in Acumatica because everything is just done via interbank exchanges. Interbanking exchanges. So it's like, why? Why is there a need for physical checks? Like what? So, yeah,
it's amazing how backwards we are with checks.
Funny, Yeah, all you can do is laugh. Like, it's just the way things are done. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm curious too on the point about multiple countries. Did you do anything as far as language translation using the translation feature in Acumatica to present screens in different languages, or is everything just using English?
We originally were looking at it, but I guess when we went live in 2018, there were some basic localization packages. The main country we would really use it for is Thailand, but it just didn't translate over that well unless we did like our own basically translation dictionary and put it into Acumatica. And given how well our Thai team speaks English, they just said, don't worry about it. We'd rather you not, it's like with anything when you translate things, right? I guess the phrase lost in translation is there for a reason. You kind of lose the true effect of what you're trying to say. And they're like, rather than you butcher this in trying to translate it, we'll just leave it in English. We know what the keywords are, but we'll figure it out. Since then, I believe, talking to the Acumatica, the person who kind of handles that region, there is a pretty cool localization package for Thailand that has come out, and I think that includes the Thai language. We just haven't had a chance quite yet to kind of flesh it out and see if it'll be a really good fit for us. So something we'll definitely consider doing in the future.
I've always wondered that. I haven't dealt with an implementation that did a translation before, but yeah, I've always wondered the value of it in that if you can manage you can manage English, it does make it a lot easier for you to be able to reference a specific screen and a specific field, right, in an email or something, mm-hmm. and that you're just using the same phrase, whether it's English or Chinese or whatever it is, it matches and you can see it on your screen. That's a good practical point to consider.
Yeah, and considering that most of the Acumatica management, in terms of, just kind of all the settings and troubleshooting and whatnot, all comes out of the U.S. office. It is good that, that's the wrong term. It's nice that, everything's standardized in English, because it just makes things a little easier for us, And thankfully, most of the people we work with speak pretty good English, definitely much better English than we speak in their native language. So I'm very grateful for that. And, it just makes things a little easier for us to deal with. What's right or wrong, I don't know, but from a convenience standpoint, I appreciate it.
What about on the manufacturing side, or just customizations in general? I'd imagine, did you do anything to have Acumatica talk with your SQL database that's managing more of the process?
Yeah, we created basically custom import and export scenarios on both sides, and basically, where the ordering workflow starts in Acumatica and then goes into the production database to get programmed. And then once it's in there, then as our production cycle kind of continues, then we feed all the information back via import scenarios. It's something we could automate, but it just we decided originally that was the plan. We were just going to let it all run in the background, but there's a few things that make it a little tricky, and we just decided, given the amount of actual effort it takes to import and export something, it's just something we'd rather have a little bit more human control over, because just given how important it is to the financial accuracy of the business.
Is that a nightly process, and is Excel involved in the middle there?
Yep. Yeah, it's nightly, and yes, it spits it out. Everything comes in and out via Excel formatting.
I love hearing that. I think it's another great practical point, because I feel like that happens all the time. Someone says, we need to integrate these two systems, and they just dive right into APIs and the technical side without stepping back and considering, well, how frequent does it really need to be, and how painful really is it to use what's probably the world's most popular integration solution, and that is Excel in the middle, right? You just dump it out, and then you automate the dumping out of it. Right? You just dump it out, and then you automate the dumping out of it, right? And then you automate the importing of it. But you can get 80% of the way there a lot of times just by doing that, and you maybe never need the remaining 20%. But I love hearing little stories like that.
Yeah, especially if it's not, an extremely exorbitant amount of data. Excel is fine. It's a perfectly useful tool, and I've definitely experienced some limitations with it. But for this usage, you're basically just passing out. There may be 4 or 5 fields, and maybe a few thousand rows at most. And Excel is more than capable of handling that. So why overcomplicate things, to your point, with creating APIs and, just all the stuff that is nice, because, I'm a firm believer in trying to automate every amount of the items that you can. But to your point, sometimes the cost benefit is just not there. so just stick with it, and, it's a nice to have. There's a lot of things, being an SMB, that's always the first thought that comes to my mind when evaluating anything. Is this something we need to have, or is this something that's nice to have? And then, based upon those two, it's like, all right, given if it's a need to have, how to do it cost effectively. And then if it's a nice to have, do we even want to spend, how much money is it really worth, and what time and effort and, and even dollars is it really saving? So.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to what the word automate really means. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean high technology, right? I mean, to me, you can achieve quote automation in a process by just communicating better with the team and having people use a few different ways of doing it rather than 10 different ways of doing it. And you can achieve automation that way, right? So to me, it's always a combination of humans and process and computers, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need computers everywhere to automate everything. Sometimes that can create more problems than it solves. I like that practical approach.
Yeah. I think you phrased it perfectly. It's like anything in life. There's balance. There is a usage and an optimization point of each of those individual elements. but when you achieve, true optimization in terms of, both efficiency and from an economic standpoint, it's a balance. You gotta, and that's the job of whoever's managing the system, whoever's implementing the system, whatever, to kind of strike that balance, and I think that's a great differentiator in someone who's going to be able to successfully implement a system like Acumatica versus someone who might struggle.
Great advice. What about any future project plans on the horizon? I know we're coming up against the top of the hour, but maybe rounding it off with looking forward with Acumatica. Maybe is everything running smoothly? No plans, or do you guys have some future things that you'd like to do with the system?
Everything's running smoothly for what we need. There is one thing that we're currently working on. It's an integration with an IBM product called Planning Analytics. It's their SMB version of, I think it's called T1 Cognos, I believe is the name of the platform. And it's got a little bit of BI, a little bit of reporting, and also it's very powerful for forecasting. So that's something we're working on. It's going to address a major business need for us because, we're not a massive company, but, we're still 6 entities, and, we go through a forecasting process. It's a lot of compiling and, a lot of manual work that needs to be done in the process. And one of the favorite things that I get told is, let's move ASP by 50 cents or whatever, $1. That's easy, right? And it's just always made me laugh. I'm like, I can do it. It's like I can do it on the back of an envelope, and it'll be pretty close, or I can do it properly, and then where it's actually cemented into our forecasting numbers. But I'm like, it's gonna take me a few hours. Let me get back to you. So this is gonna allow us to have that level of functionality, and be a little bit more agile in our forecasting process, and especially why you would need something like this. There was a period of time it was almost day to day. The long-term outlook of the business was changing. And you kind of wanted to evaluate both best case and worst case, and if you want to do it on a pretty accurate basis, it's more than just kind of back of the envelope calculation. So, just having that agility to be able to say, all right, this is where we're tracking, but, we're expecting this to happen 2 months from now, quickly change the figures and rather than having to basically rerun every report to kind of get everything where you need to be, it's just changing the figures and, kind of everything flowing through. And then you're saying, all right, this is the end effect, good, bad, indifferent.
Can you spell that one for me? I'll drop a link to it. Was it Tiny Analytics?
Planning Analytics.
Planning. And it was IBM product, like a small version of more familiar with is Solver BI360. I'm curious if you guys looked at that.
Yeah, it's definitely something we looked at. I like the product. I happened to pop into a CFO conference a few years ago and met someone who's heavily involved with the Planning Analytics product, and yeah, they did it. I was kind of, I had seen a lot of BI tools and stuff, and I'm impressed by all of them. It's just, which one's going to be the best fit. And then I saw this one and I'm like, oh, this is actually exactly what we need. Because we don't need heavy visualization. We just need the basics. It's good enough for us. But then I saw, the ability for forecasting, and, they're also building in some machine learning elements to it for when you're looking at your forward demand planning, forward sales forecasting, all that stuff. So, it was like, oh, this is where I don't know, I could be way off base, but this is where I feel like everything's going. So I'm like, I kind of at least want to get us on the right ship, I guess, that's going down that track. So that's kind of what really piqued my interest.
Yeah, when you get into BI and analytics and stuff, I mean, it doesn't have to be a product that has an Acumatica connector. They're totally accustomed to connecting to any data source, and Acumatica's data is available, and they can connect to it, right? And there's so many BI products out there, you don't have to go with one in the Acumatica ecosystem. That makes sense.
And just the way that we had to parse the data to get it coming out of Acumatica for the system to be effective was nice, because it just didn't require much. It was like things that we already have coming out via OData feeds into our Excel reporting. So it's, it's like, oh, this is perfect. It's not. It's like, oh, this is perfect. It's not going to require us to recreate the wheel in any way. Just kind of tweak things here and there, and off and running.
Very cool. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on today. I know we're up against the top of the hour. And anything else, though, that comes to mind that you'd like to mention?
Just thank you for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of share some of my Acumatica experiences, with the the current and potential Acumatica customer world out there. It's a great product. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of people who kind of steer the Acumatica ship, and they're all very impressive. And, it's one of those things, like, they're just good people. I appreciate the way they do business. I appreciate, the way they take care of their customers. And, I think you've been to a few summits. They're always very fun events. And it's just a great customer ecosystem. I've met, some of our ISVs that we work with I've met through the summits, and even some of the things we've implemented in terms of problem solving within Acumatica or within our reporting have been customers, just out of the kindness of their heart, basically taking a few hours out of their week to kind of walk me through, all right, this is how you do it. And I'm very appreciative, because I'd like to think we live in a world where everyone looks out for each other, but unfortunately it's not always the case. So
I agree with you. Strong ecosystem. I think it was actually, was it last summit or the summit before? I think you were on stage with John Roskell, and I think his point was you're probably one of the world's best surfing CFOs, something like that.
Yeah, that was the last summit. It was definitely one of those moments that makes you blush. Because as much as I love John, I don't know if I can back up that statement.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. I wonder how confident you were in that statement.
It's all right. Thankfully, there's very little visual evidence of how well or how poorly I did. So we'll just leave it out there like that.
But to your point in the beginning, that's pretty cool that you're able to meld the two, your career and your what you like to do for fun. That's awesome.
Definitely.
Well, thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it.
No worries, man. Thank you very much for having me. And enjoy the rest of your week. And I was gonna say long weekend, but then long weekend, but that's next week. Almost a long
next weekend. We're almost there.
Yeah. Getting a little too excited. Thanks, Deb.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of AUGforums.com Real Talk.